Shalom and bracha. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of what we like to call Semichas Chaver, or Chaver Talks. Today we have the tremendous honor and the tremendous chus to be with Rav Ari Levy Shlita, all the way from the land down under, from Sydney, Australia. It's a tremendous chus. Rav Ari gives the shir in Sydney, together with the Sydney Kollel in the Central Synagogue over there. It was originally started by Rav Reuven Klein. This is mamish almost in the beginning. Rav Reuven Klein joined on the Semichas Chaver bandwagon. I remember when it was one of the first manim, when he called me up, I was like, wow, Sydney, Australia. You know, that when you say you've made it to Sydney, you're like, okay, now we're global. Right? When it's New York, New Jersey, and Israel, you're not global yet. But when you reach Sydney, so then we're global. So it was started by Rav Reuven Klein, and then Rav Ari Levy for the past few years has mamish been taking over, and it's mamish been incredible. So it's a big schus to have you on. And as usual, with all of our amazing, incredible Rabbanim, I just want to first get a little bit of background on you, your Rabbeim, where you learned, where you have your Mesorah for pssak and shilas, and then a little bit about the Chabura itself in Sydney.
Sure, no, thank you so much, Rav Eliyah. That's a pleasure to join you. Thank you for the opportunity. Just a big shkoyach to you for everything that you've done for the program for Sydney. It's been tremendous, just a tremendous merit to be able to be part of the program. I think everyone really enjoys it. And like you said, you feel like once Sydney came on the map of Semichas Chaver, that you'd hit the map. We had the other day, people should be aware, we had a Chaver brachot in the Chabura. Someone got married, and he and his wife and some of the Chaver and their wives came to a Chaver brachos in Semichas Chaver after the shir. And you, Rav Eliyah, you remember you sent a message. And I think when we played that message, which I can talk about, you said, marriage is like a test. It's like a Semichas Chaver test, and everyone enjoyed that very much. You have to pass in marriage as well. It was a good message. We enjoyed it. But I think the people in the Chabura really felt that, we'd made it as a Chabura, because in Sydney, it's far away from New York and from London, Yerushalayim, it's far away from the centers of learning in the current era. And I think it's really nice for us here to feel connected to something bigger, and that you made that effort. But I think in the same way you feel that the Chabura made it, I think we also feel, really part of something. So I think it's a big, given us a big opportunity to join you. So I'm originally from London, as my accent may somewhat give me away, although others may say not. I grew up in London in a school called Hasmonean, where all good sort of London schoolboys used to go. And I grew up on the knees, I would say, of the Ben Ish Chai. My father introduced me to the Ben Ish Chai at a young age. That was my family, our Sephardi tradition. But in London, the stronger religious community, at least back then, was an Ashkenazi influence. So we grew up with quite a mixed identity. But certainly the Ben Ish Chai began at a young age, where we saw things like Ma'im Acharonim, Chovah, he would say, a lot of that came through from the beginning. I went after that to Keren B'Yavneh for a few years, and then I was in London in university for a few years, where I was learning the Beis Midrash there in the evening, and then I went to Grus for a year actually with some of the Chevra that I knew from Yavneh. They were doing their smicha in YU, and they went back to Grus for a year, and I went also back to Israel, and I got married for a year, and a little bit of time in Mir, just to soak up the atmosphere there as well. In London also, when I was working there, I was in a morning kollel in Edgware, a beautiful kollel. I think it's called the Edgware kollel. Maybe it's called something else now, which I enjoyed very much. And just getting around and learning wherever I can. I now work in financial services in Sydney, but I teach as well with the Sydney kollel, a bit of Gemara, a bit of halacha, which I get a huge amount from. In terms of the influences in halacha for me, so I try, if I'm honest with you, I try and avoid real shilas from people that demand too much judgment. I don't sort of feel that I'm necessarily qualified. I have a smich, obviously, for sure, but I like to be a little bit careful and make sure that I'm going to sort of klei kodesh to answer the real shilas. But I get a real kick out of asking different rabbanim not to chase a pssak, but to understand how they think about things, and just to get a sense of how they approach different shilas, just to understand the different perspectives. When I was growing up, I had a wonderful Rabbi Lieberman in Edgware. I still until recently asked shilas, Rabbi Kimchi. I think one of his children is now on the gives one of the chaburas, and one of his sons-in-law, Rabbi Tugendhaft, who I have mentioned recently, he gives one of the chaburas. Rabbi Kimchi is now in Melbourne, so we have him here in the land down under. He's now in Melbourne. So I actually spoke to him today about a shiner, so I still, until today. Rav Aviad Tabori, whose father, Benjamin Tabori, was in Zichrono Livracha, was in Gush before him, but he was in London for a while. I still in touch with him on shiners as well, and various others. I spent time learning in Yavne with Rabbi Silva, who's tremendous pssak, and he taught us Basa B'chalav and Taruves, and he taught us a lot of Hilchos Shabbos, and just the way that he would process the pssak. Until today, the audio shirim give me a huge amount. Rav Ovadia Yosef, I would say, is a really defining pssak for me. I think really a lot of my love of halacha comes from learning a lot of his shiners. I think what he gave as a radio show in Yechamed Dat became a big influence on me, just the ability to take a sugya, and the way that it's presented in the Semichas Chaver material in many ways is quite similar to the way he constructs his shiners with the sources from the Mishnah and the Gemara through the Rishonim and through the pssak. So those are sort of the influences on me from a halachic perspective, and I like I say, I enjoy sort of asking around and seeing different perspectives in halacha, but I try and avoid the judgment. When we come in the note and it says, so what should we do lemaaseh? And it says, ask your local Orthodox rabbi. And I say, Chevra, that is not me. You can ask your local Orthodox rabbi. I'll tell you what Shlomo Zalman says, or Moshe says, or Ovadia says. But you know what? I'm not gonna choose a view here.
Amazing, interesting, fascinating, incredible. You mentioned in the beginning that you grew up really on the foots of the Ben Ish Chai, but then also Rav Ovadia. Now in Eretz Yisrael, like the two psakim of Rav Ovadia, and really it was Rav Mordechai Eliyahu who went more in like the mahalach of the Ben Ish Chai, more like the Kabbalistic approach. So you made that transition from like Ben Ish Chai, Rav Mordechai Eliyahu to Rav Ovadia.
Yeah, so it's very...
I get a lot of flack. I get a lot of flack from some Sephardi communities. Like, you're only quoting Rav Ovadia. You're only quoting, where's that?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, the Ben Ish Chai, I think what my father, who many of my friends called the Chacham, my father is a huge influence on me as well. But I think what he saw in the Ben Ish Chai was, I think for a young boy, we grew in, it was, the Hebrew is not that the ideas are simple. A lot of his parsha, notes are very complicated and very esoteric, but the halacha it's broken down, it's vowelized, it's been printed beautifully, and it's actually, if you want to sit and learn with a child, as I was then, it was very easy to pick up, and so it became easier. Rav Ovadia his Sfarim weren't really available then, at least not in the way that they are now. But I understand exactly what you're saying, and it's absolutely true. I think I was reading about this. Rabbi Ben Ilau has a book called Mimaran ad Maran, right? It's a biography of Rav Ovadia through the eyes of his pssak halacha. So he has in there, the idea, it's a play on Mimoshe ad Moshe, Mimaran ad Maran, right? That's from Mechaber Shulchan Aruch to Rav Ovadia. And I understand that in the early part of his, halachic career, Rav Ovadia received a lot of intense opposition to his views from the followers of the Ben Ish Chai, because he came up with a lot of things that Shulchan Aruch the Ben Ish Chai didn't always agree with, often aligned to the Ramah or some of the Chumras, and certainly the Mechaber didn't have. But the challenge, I think, that I found at least were with the views with following the pssak of the Ben Ish Chai is that Rav Ovadia sort of makes it's all like a Shulchan Aruch, like it's all there. All the footnotes, all the chuvas, and you can sort of, it's just there. You want to learn it, you want to understand it. The Ben Ish Chai, I mean, obviously he knew it all, and we all wrote it all down, and there's no doubt about that, of course. But I found the access more difficult. And so you have to sort of you have to understand what the views are. You have to understand sometimes there are things that all Sephardim around the world, except for maybe, Rav Ovadia's followers in Eretz Yisrael, had a certain way for 1,000 years in Baghdad. They went that way. So you have to sort of work out, different things. Maybe Hilchos Tefillah or Rav Ovadia often aligns to the Ben Ish Chai a bit more with those sorts of things. So, you have traditions, family traditions, things that perhaps, feel more right one way or the other. So long as they don't conflict and contradict in the pssak, I think, people work out their own mahalach. Certainly Rav Ovadia, so many of his views are lenient. There's a joke with Sfardim. People say, so you basically you eat kidneys on pssak, you do whatever you want. So you go for slichas 40 days a year, and that basically everything else is mutter. And that's sort of how it feels sometimes. There's not a huge number of things that are, it's that chumrah. There are occasional chumras, but generally speaking, most of Ravadia's psakim, a lot of what he says is quite lenient. So you have to work out whether you're being sort of honest with yourself sometimes. If you want to make sure you're not hunting around for a heta, you have to be careful.
The Ravadia's tshuvas are mamish incredible. You always, whenever I see people who are like learning halacha for the first time and they open up for the first time like a tshuva in Nebi Aimer or Chavadas and they start going through it, their mind is blown. It's like, holy cow. Like, I cannot believe that there was one person this much. Meaning not the Chas v'Shalom negate from any of the other Ashkenazi poskim who also knew what's up, but the way he writes it and quoting like thousands of svarim and being malak at everything, and then basically saying because of this we're combining everything and it's going to be mutter or us, whatever it is. It's not jad. They say that once there was like a story with like an aguna with that they came to the Chazanish and the Chazanish asked her it. And then they came to Rav Avadia was Mikala. He said that she can get remarried. And then when the Chazanish met Rav Avadia, right, or the Shluchim, whatever, met one another, he said, how could Rav Avadia be Mikala? So Rav Avadia said, when the woman is standing in front of you, you have to find, you can rely on like the more Mekel Shitas. There's something along those lines that a lot of times when it's just a theoretical question, obviously the Chazanish felt that it would be aser, but Rav Avadia, like he connected to people. I remember his Levaya. I was to be here in Eretz Yisrael, and it was they say it was close to 1 million people at his Levaya. You couldn't get near it. It was I think it was the biggest, largest gathering in Eretz Yisrael since infection. Like in one moment.
Certainly a tremendous, just a historical figure. And I think, the Sephardim didn't have, I know in parts of Los Angeles and there are parts of Israel where, maybe New York, I don't know, where the Sephardim, reign supreme. But this idea of Nachzira, Tarali Yoshna, this idea that, the Sephardim had this tremendous, the Rishonim and the Rambam and the Ramban, for many years and many era, that the Sephardim had this incredible, not dominance, but incredible parity, whatever it was. But then there was a time when there was just a bit of a void, or it was, based on the countries they lived in, it was through no fault of anyone, but unfortunately they didn't have the same level, or maybe the same, impact or breadth of scholarship or sort of students. And he sort of came out and suddenly is taking everyone on, and there's no one who can touch him in terms of his breadth. But you're right, his manner of pssak and the style of his tshuva is very different to many of the other poskim. I should say, like, I know I said he's often very lenient. I'm not, obviously, Rav Avadia is obviously 100% everything he said was absolute Torah and truth. But I remember something Rav Shechter once said that stayed with me, which is that every chumrah is a kula. That's the truth. Every shaila, whichever way you go, every chumrah is going to be a kula as well. Yeah? If you're strict about, I don't know, kashrus or chanav, the type of milk that your host is eating, you're going to offend your host. You forbid this person from the wife if she can't go to the mikveh tonight. Then that's also a kula for them. Everything is perspective, and I think often the Rabbanim, based on who you ask. Why one of the reasons I'm so fascinated by asking different Rabbanim different shaylas, you ask different Rabbanim the same shayla, you get different pssak, because they have just different ways of looking. Different communities also they're addressing. Rav Avadia and Rav Moshe both have tshuvas about bat mitzvah, so a girl who turns bat mitzvah. So how much celebration should we invest? And Rav Moshe, he's sort of, we already invested too much already in bar mitzvahs. It's already too extravagant. So now you want to have bar mitzvahs as well. It's not appropriate. It's not necessary. And Rav Avadia is completely the opposite. And you wonder, that you also wonder, a little bit about the reform movement and the influences that were happening in their communities at that time and what they were fighting, what they were grappling with, and how that affected, what they felt was the appropriate pssak. So I find that very fascinating.
Yeah, for sure. There's always the reason in the Gemara why there's Bishama and Beis Hillel. Why not just give Beis Hillel? Because when you see the the descending view, it gives you a better Havana. So obviously, a person in a Harav, you need to have one Rav and you can't go shopping for pssak.
Sure.
But when you're learning up, and you see all the different shitas, it just enhances it. It's something that's incredible. Even
Absolutely.
when, we Smichas Chaver, we have a branch called Smichas Chaver Chabad, which is like fascinating how that developed. Where basically we took all the material and on top of that we added, the Chabad poskim, more of the Shulchan Aruch Harav, and then some more of the Ma'amdi poskim. And I remember when we started, so in the beginning they're like, oh, why don't we just like skip all the stuff and then and just go straight to the Chabad pssak. So I told them, I said, listen, let's try Zman where you do it, more like the Smichas Chaver way, and then add the Chabad poskim, and then tell me how you think it goes. And they came back and they all said it, Mamish, it's like it's Shemayim V'aretz when you're learning all the other views. So now you understand, even the Shulchan Aruch Harav himself, where did he get his shita from? Why was he saying like this and not like that? It's and it makes it a lot more a lot clearer. So you've been giving Smichas Chaver for a bunch of years.
2 years.
What were
I
you
think so.
How many years?
I don't know, 2-3 years maybe. Rabbi Klein is now living in Ramat Beit Shemesh, and he is so it must be a few years already. Yeah.
So what would you say was like your favorite Zaman, the most interesting Zaman?
So I enjoyed all of them. I really enjoyed the Zman where we did sort of we do like Lechem Mishneh and what do we do? Kiddush and Havdalah, like there's a lot of the Hilchos Shabbos stuff. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed also Boreh. We did a lot of Hilchos Shabbos, didn't we? I remember now. So I got a real kick out of that. I'm enjoying this as well. I really enjoyed the Shlosh Shachlo I learned some years ago, and just to bring the pssak to life. I find them all brilliant. I think people love them. To learn the whole sugya. I mean, it's not. I think everyone appreciates that it's not the whole sugya. You don't. But just to get a really good taste and people spend many years often learning in yeshivas, and there's a lot of talk about this, more recently about the level of sipuk people have. Obviously, people want to learn. Rav Shechter once say you should have a plan to learn Kol HaTorah Kula in your life, right? And what is Kol HaTorah Kula? And here are the things that you have to learn, and that's a tall ask, a tall order. But really, everyone should learn everyone has to make sure they learn every day and learn what they enjoy. And this is one way where people, a lot of people get a real sipuk out of seeing the sugya come together and getting an appreciation of the pssak. So I really think that the material is beautifully presented, and I'll happily do any zman. Although I found it a bit more difficult than most, I have to say. I found that quite complicated. But otherwise, Orach Chaim zman I found easy.
You'll be up for Hilchos Malika?
Malika, yeah, very good. We'll do some practical exhibitions for the Chaver. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you get like any interesting shilas, or has there been where like you taught a halacha and people are like, "What? Really? That's a thing?"
Yeah, we had. I think one thing we learned recently where people were a bit surprised was the obligation of women to join a zimun if they're with men, if they're with a zimun of men, like an absolute obligation. And Rav Moshe's tshuva was, I found that sort of blew me away. I hadn't learned that before, that tshuva where he says he has to call his wife. He can't bench without his wife. He has to call her. And it's quite strongly worded that he says that. And it's interesting to see that because you don't, it's just not necessarily, it's just not expected necessarily, from people that they see that. So that was fascinating.
And it gets complicated with bat mitzvah age girls. Like you're having a long meal and you have a girl who's bat mitzvah, and then her friends come like, "Oh, we're going on Shabbos. We want to go here," and you're like, "Oh, you can't leave. We got a bench,
right?"
So you bench, you stop, you don't bench, but it's so maybe you bench and you continue later. You continue the meal afterwards. If you're doing it, that would be the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Now, do you have any other?
Say again.
Do you have any other eitzah? Like if your daughter, I don't know, you have a bar mitzvah.
Right. I think that's right. You gotta bench together. I think it's just a different way of thinking. Zimun, I think a lot of people assume or had assumed until now it's a guy thing. That's what that's the thing. But it becomes a chiyuv for women. I find it fascinating. Also, I know that there's a bit of a difference in different traditions, I would say, or maybe different strands of orthodoxy, whether women are encouraged to, or whether they're obliged Zimmern, like the Gra and others say, or whether they should be, whether it's optional for them, or whether if there's a man, then maybe they shouldn't join, maybe they should join. So, but that's more societal. But I agree. That's the only way to do it, is to make sure everyone benches together.
Amazing. Have you ever seen like a woman's even? You ever been in a situation?
I have seen it. I've seen it before. Yeah, years ago, I have seen it. I have to say, I have one daughter, and thank God, several sons. So I maybe won't experience it at home, but I have seen it. But I remember sort of when it originally thinking that it was sort of, I wouldn't say fringe,
Right.
but I remember feeling like it's more sort of modernish, sort of, not that I'm offended by that, but like just it's a bit out there. But it's actually, seemingly not. In fact, according to some of the big poskim, it's obligatory, but it's not the custom, right? So you kind of, that's interesting, I find.
I remember in my house growing up. So I grew up in Washington Heights, and my sister, Elimor, she had a friend, Chana Reifman, who was the daughter of Rabbi Reifman, Rav Reifman from YU. And by him, they always used to do, whenever there was 3 girls around, they would have a zima.
So they would do that. They would do separate to the men. In other words, 3 and 3.
No. It was usually like my father was away giving a shir, and I was like, I was like the young kid at home, and they would have a shalosh together, like all the girls. I was probably, I don't know, 10, 11, 12, like that age, and they were older already, and they would have a shalosh at home, just the girls, and they would all make a zima. Yeah, and I was like, what?
Why not?
But yeah,
that's not right. So yeah,
amazing. Okay, so once we're already into like the shilas of the Zman, so there's always a few shilas that I ask all the Rabbanim, and one is my machainim. You do it, you don't do it, you push it, you don't push it, you always did it. Give us a little background. What do you do?
So, I mean, like I mentioned, the Ben Ish Chai says my machainim. We actually learned this recently with my daughter was asking me whether she should do it or not. So I said, well, let's have a look. Let's open up the Semichas Chaver. So we were reading it. I pulled out the Ben Ish Chai, and he says, I think his father sometimes would use that statement if he didn't have a chance of no one said the Torah. They would say, "My macharonim chova," right? So then that's already a dvar halacha. But I think we were aware of that. I think growing up, maybe we didn't always do it, but I picked that up, some years ago. Something I picked up in probably when I went into yeshiva and learned for Ovadia and Ben Ish Chai in a bit more depth and had an understanding. So I do that. Do it sometimes in the sink, or sometimes if someone's recently purchased a little cup and a thing for me, so we do in there. Make sure to take it off the table afterwards. And we don't force it on anyone. We have a lot of Ashkenazi guests who are not particular. I have to say that is one thing when you asked, I should have said earlier that people were surprised about. A lot of people, I don't think that's not common certainly in London where I grew up, and certainly here, whereas there's a weaker Orthodox or weaker religious community than London. That is not standard practice in Ashkenazi circles. But I think for Sephardim it's obvious. But from the materials, it seems like it's people should be more encouraged to do it. Yeah. So,
and the guys in your shir, have you seen that they're more into it? Like,
I think people are more into it now. Yeah. I'm not sure. Remember, we learned there was another one similar to this. I think it was years ago. The davar shetivula b'mashke, right? That halacha about something that's wet. So that's another thing that people are not aware of.
But already there was a lot more shitas like to be makel over there. But my machainim, it seems like straight up Shulchan Aruch Ramah.
You'll be doing it. Yeah, for sure. But it doesn't seem to be the custom. What's it like? Where you grew up, everyone does it in where?
Yeah,
more standard. It's like 6 hours. I'll tell you something else in London, and people, everyone waits 3 hours between me and milk in London. 3 hours.
There's a very strong Yakish influence.
Yeah,
a lot of Jews probably came to London.
I guess so.
Yeah,
but everyone else
demeanor of British people is very yak. The whole demeanor of British people is very Yakish. Right? It's like very sophisticated, very, they're very on time. Right? A yak is this never. He's not early. He's not early, and he's not late. He's like perfect. Right. He's on time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Very good. I guess that's right.
Amazing. So what What about like Zimon on, like when traveling, Zimon on a plane? Have you ever seen that? Have you ever,
Yeah.
a few guys together or on a bus? Did you work with
Um,
other Jews? Do you work
yeah,
with other Jews?
I think it's a beautiful thing to do. I don't remember sort of seeing it, but obviously sitting in an loud plane, you could have that all the time. You know, the pilot you could probably join with on a plane. I get a real thrill out of that sort of thing. But although you have to first navigate whether the roll is mez or not, you have to wash, and there's mazonis and that sort of thing.
That's there's not a
We learn that
cover.
also in Semichas Chaver. So
Right.
it all comes together on an adult plane. Yeah, no, I've not seen it. I had yeah, we had the question came up about on a bus and on a camp and the bumpiness on the ride. I haven't sort of personally experienced it, but I think that'd be appropriate, right? You're sitting on a plane with the chassid to your left and I don't know, whoever else on your right. Why not? Three Jews get together, eat together. Very nice. Shalom Yisrael.
You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We saw a Shaila of lifting the Iver, if you remember, also in one of his money. That if you have fortunately, if you have a nod from you next to you and the stewardess says, "Oh, do you mind passing the non-kosher food to him?" And you're like, "Oh, 1 second. Is that Messiah? Is it?" That was also
Yeah.
Shaila.
Yeah, it's to excuse yourself. That's exactly right. Yeah. Yeah. I remember that.
Better way.
There are a lot of shilas. Yeah. Yeah.
But that's what's amazing, I think, about, and also from the feedback that people give all the time about Semichas Chaver, is that when you're like in a sugya and halacha, you see everything through that lens of halacha.
Yeah.
I remember when we were doing the Zman of opening containers on Shabbos, right, that you mentioned before, like you said, Boyer, I think that's Zman Wilson did.
It was the same Zman, yeah.
Right. So someone said to me, he says, I can't go to the supermarket anymore. He says, I go up else, and all I see is this form of binyan, that form of stira, this opening a package, that and I said, that's an amazing thing, right? Because we strive to lasik with divrei Torah 24/7, right? But most of Am Yisrael, works. You have a job. You can't be 24/7, in the sugya. But I venture to say that a lot of people, for sure, are in Semichas Chaver. They're living it like every second of the day.
Yeah.
Like they don't even realize. Now they'll, like, if you've been already a few zman in Semichas Chaver, and like you guys at work, you're having a donut. You're like, 1 second, is it a shear? Is it not a shear? And you're walking out, is this shear makom? And then I'm having a coffee with it, and am I done? And not. And then so it's like you don't even realize, but your whole day you're actually thinking and learning. So yeah, maybe you don't have a Gemara open in front of you, but those.
No, I think that's 100% right. I think that's I think that's part of the chosma elokis of the idea of having mitzvahs and halacha to permeate everything. I remember Rabbi Kimchi once said that Ratzak Kadosh Baruch Hu Zakas is Yisrael. Zaka is, in other words, from the notion of zach, that to pure, in other words, to refine us, and not just. I think he meant, he was talking maybe more about how we are as people, but it's about the sensitivity of every action, everything you think about, and the way that your mind sort of focuses on things and hones in on things is to be sort of permeated by the Torah and by the right behaviors, but the right thought processes as well. So I think that's right, and that's that's one of the beauties I think of learning halacha l'maaseh is that sometimes if you're learning sort of a more abstract sugya or not ali b'derech it can be more difficult. You can daydream, but it's more difficult to connect it to the milk bottle in the fridge of the supermarket or whatever it is. You know what I mean? So yeah, I agree. I think that's tremendous. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Do you have any interesting stories from someone in your shir about Semichas Chaver, about learning halacha, how it affected him, how it something that he didn't expect about himself?
Yeah, so I have to let me think about that for a moment. I'll tell you one thing that was a tremendous for us in Sydney was in Semichas Chaver was when Rav Shlomo Amar came to Sydney.
Oh, that was amazing.
We had Rav Shlomo Amar in the full garb. It was tremendous. Everyone wanted to be in the photo. All that Rabbanim pitched up from all over town and came, and he sort of really gave us a real chizuk. Look, I think the Chabura here, we have people in the Chabura in Sydney who are very more advanced in their learning, and some who are really less have had less exposure to higher sort of Jewish education, but they come and they're focused and they enjoy it. We had a couple of guys. There was a guy, or recently doesn't find it particularly easy. No, at the beginning of each Zman, I ask someone to sort of say a few words about the test for some of the newbies, We have a few new guys come along that want to take it on. So okay, let's get someone who did the test to sort of speak about it, because it's good to encourage everyone. Not everyone wants to do it. Okay, so it's all right. It's not, it's not the be all and end all. Obviously, it's a good thing, but coming to the shir is already a mile in itself. And one of these guys stood up and just said, I just never thought I would be able to do this. This guy's he works in consulting and has a degree, whatever. And he said, I really never thought I would get this down pat, that I'd be able to pass the test. And I worked at it, and we've come together. And you see people, they walk away, and myself as well. It's the same. It's the same for all of us. I'm not sort of trying to create a differentiation, but when you sort of do it, and you have a family that have watched you do it, and you take that home with you, and you sort of stand in front of them, and they see their father in that way, and we invite everyone to the siyum together, the men, the women, and the children want to come. We have to maybe work more on the children next time, but we have a few kids that come along, and I think people feel really proud of themselves. And a few guys in particular I can think of who I think it really changed the way that they hold themselves in respect of the Torah. Like, they really sort of, we talk about, someone asks you, what do you do? I work in a bank, but you go through phases where someone asks you, what do you do? And you say, I teach Semichas Chaver on a Wednesday night for the Sydney Kollel, and I give a podcast in Gemara every day, and I work for a bank. So how do we define ourselves is important. And if someone asks me, what's your highest educational accolade? Do I say I did this degree, whatever it was, or do I say no, I did a smicha, or I did a smicha, whatever it is? And I think for people to be able to even have that vocabulary in their mind, that the way they view themselves is not through the perspective of achievement only in their, which is all noble. Obviously, everyone should work, and they should work with honesty, and they should be nasata b'natata b'emunah. All these things are very important. But they were also kavatei to Torah, and they also came and they did a test, and they really held themselves to account, and they achieved something in learning they never thought they would be able to do. I think what you've done. I know you don't like the praise, but like it or not, what you've done and what Hashem has, what you've been, you've given us the opportunity to do is very, very, very amazing for all of us. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so leave us. We'll end with this. The last question I always ask the Rabbanim is if you can give us a tip to improve our benching. This is one that we're really learning, and growing our benching. Do you have any practical lemaisa tip that I could implement tonight that will help me with my benching?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have to say that I found that I've listened to some of the other Rabbanim and what they said, and I'm going to try some of those to buy some of this bencher. I think Shai Klein spoke about a bencher with pictures in that I've not seen in Sydney. I'm desperate to get a hold of it, and we have maybe a different one here. I think a couple of things. One is just that the words of Birchas Hamazon, they're very beautiful. And as a child, I went to schools where we learned Hebrew, and we had good Hebrew. But when your first language is not Hebrew, unless you actually think about the words that you're saying, and there are a lot of Sidurim that have, transliterated or very clear linear translation, but not a lot. I haven't seen a lot of benches, or often the benches don't present in that way. And I think just taking time to just focus on the meaning of the words can be very powerful, because they're very beautiful tefillos in benching. Very beautiful. As we learn in the Zman, benching should be said with people should take their time and go slow. It's like, not that we compare like Shemona Esrei, but also I think I have to say, I know we all learn the tune as kids. I have young children, and so I sing the benching with them. I've actually found that in doing that, if you put those two things together, personally, if you go a bit slower, think about the meaning of the words, and make sure you say it out loud. Obviously, we have to anyway, but sing a little bit slowly. It can make a tremendous difference to benching. So yeah, that's what I would suggest. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, Ravari, Yashikal Gadol, Hashem should bless you. And regards to the entire Sini Chabura.
Absolutely.
And only good things.
In regards to Kilat KLR, I have some friends and family in your community.
Okay.
And
You're always welcome.
Wonderful things.
Join. Have to check it out.
Please, God,
Yeah.
from your mouth
We'll
to
love to
God's
hope-
ears. Absolutely. Shkoyach, thanks for all of that. Speak to you
Okay.
soon.